Hello, I'm Mario Anderson, and welcome to In Focus Kentucky, where we take a look at issues that matter to you right here in the Bluegrass State, and we'll talk to the lawmakers, community organizers, and people like you who help shape those policies. Today, we're focusing on Kentucky's House Bill 487, which broadens the base sales tax in our state by now including select services previously exempt from taxation. If you're a pet owner, camper, fitness fanatic, or even a bowler, you might have noticed an increase in prices on your services of choice over the last couple of weeks, and that's because Kentucky's new tax code went into effect on July the 1st, which requires several new types of businesses to charge a 6% sales tax on the services they provide. So why is Kentucky's tax code changing? Kentucky legislators, they came together on House Bill 487 this past session, and a bipartisan tax reform package that would raise close to $400 million in revenue for the state was the result. This overhaul of the Bluegrass State's tax system comes after noted issues with Kentucky's pension system, which, according to the Lexington Herald Leader, is one of the worst funded pension systems in the country. Now, for smokers, the new tax law brings a 50-cent per pack increase on cigarettes. Kentucky boasts one of the highest smoking rates in the country, and lawmakers expect that much of the new tax will allow $4,000 to be spent on every public school student in Kentucky each year. Now, joining me to talk more, make sense of the new tax increase is Richard Dobson, Executive Director of Kentucky's Office of Sales and Excise Taxes, which is part of the Department of Revenue. Thanks so much for joining us here on In Focus Kentucky.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Absolutely. Now, before the tax was implemented, how did the public seem to take to this new increase from your perspective?
Well, until the actual effective date, the public in general didn't seem to be that aware of it. We've been communicating with the different groups, the business groups, the nonprofit groups, any type of association or organization that is making sales that are affected by this base increase. So we've been communicating with them, and then as the effective date has hit and these companies have begun to collect the tax, then now we're getting more questions from the public as well.
And talk with us about just getting ready to roll out this new list of services that are going to be taxed and getting prepared for that. What's been that process of getting things in order leading up to that July 1st date?
Well, it's been a little bit hectic, to say the least, because the law was passed in the middle of April the 14th, and so we had July 1st as the effective date. So we had a very short turnaround to get that in place. So, of course, looking at the legislation, trying to identify what the language said and the types of services that are included, and just kind of give you a little bit of a scope of what happened. There are 11 new types of services that are now part of the sales and use tax base that previously were not. We taxed 5 types of services, but now there are 11 types, and there are subcategories under that. Some of the language says including but not limited to. Then the entire category of admissions. Admissions were taxable previously, but now there are 8 new types of admissions that are subject to tax. So it's identifying the types of businesses and organizations affected. From our database, we tried to extract business codes to see what companies may already be registered but did not have a sales tax number, so we tried to contact those groups and sending out an email communication or a letter. We've also been using the media. We've also identified, like the professional groups, the Landscapers Association, for example, the Dry Cleaners Association, nonprofit groups, the Kentucky Nonprofit Network, for example. So we've been reaching out, communicating directly with them, conducting webinars, taking questions and answers, and also trying to get input, the types of questions that they would have, so we could anticipate, well, what type of guidance do we need to provide. And then we've had to make some changes to our return slightly. We've also established a website, a separate website from revenue.ky.gov. We have taxanswers.ky.gov. And that site is dedicated to explaining the new legislation. There's categories of the taxes affected, and then there's a place for frequently asked questions, and there's also a contact point where actually it's open to the public. Businesses or the public can actually send an email And usually every time we have some type of a broadcast or participate in an outreach with the media, there's a spike in those communications. So that's been very helpful because we're trying to use whatever means of communication to try to get the word out. But right now we're looking at the language, but we're also looking at, say, other jurisdictions. Ohio, for example, already taxes landscaping services. So we looked at, what does Ohio do? We can't completely copy what they do because their legislative language may be a little different, but to the extent it's similar, then we would at least find that guidance useful as we go forward.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining us here on In Focus Kentucky to break down this new tax law, and we appreciate your time here on the program.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson. We certainly appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, coming up, we'll speak with a small business advocate who has been outspoken against the new sales tax. We'll find out exactly his reasoning next on In Focus Kentucky.